Shri Sai Ram, Gita Vahini, by Bhagwan Shri Satya Sai Baba, Chapter 5, The Nature and Characteristics of a Person with Steady Wisdom, Sthita Prajna. Phala Apeksha, desiring the fruits of your actions, gives ashanti or unrest. Then the question may arise, if the fruits of the actions have to be given up, how can one manage to live? But why this durlabham or weakness or feebleness? He, God, Lord Krishna, who is assured Yoga Shemam, Vahamaham, I will absolutely take care of your well-being, will certainly look after that. After all, what is more important? Jivita Anandam, joy of worldly life, or Moksha Anandam, joy of liberation. Jivita Anandam is Shudram, petty or insignificant. Moksha Anandam is Nityam or eternal, and Bhadram, noble and secure. On this subject, many commentators have exercised their intelligence and written differently. Many have said that the giving up of phalam or fruit of action is advised because there is no right or authority for man to expect or desire for the fruit of action. This is a great blunder on their part. The Lord has said in the Gita, Ma phaleshu, that is, to mean do not aspire for fruit of action or deed. The word ma means do not. So basically it means the deed inevitably yields fruits or results, but the doer should not desire the fruit of the deed. Doer should renunciate the fruit of action. If Krishna's intention was to say that the doer has no right for the fruit, he would have said na phaleshu, na meaning no. So interpreting ma phaleshu as na phaleshu amounts to changing the very words of the Lord. It is maha, paradham, serious offense. When man has a right for engaging in karma, he has a right also for the fruit. No one can deny this or refuse his right. However, the doer, out of his own free will and determination, ought to renounce the karma phalam or the fruit of action. This is the meaning of ma phaleshu. So, Gita shows the way. Do the work, renounce the fruit. Phala apeksha, desiring the fruit of your actions, is a sign of rajoguna. Giving up of karma itself, since you cannot benefit by its fruit, is a sign of tamoguna. To engage oneself in karma and yet renouncing its fruit is the sign of sattva guna, or the quality of purity and goodness. This is the sacred path shown by the Gita. In addition, Krishna also said that it is essential to cultivate samabuddhi, or equanimity of mind, in the gain of the desirable and the undesirable. Then, sangha buddhi, that is attachment of mind to the world. For a karma yogi, why did he advise not to cultivate sangha buddhi? For the sangha or the worldly attachments or affections is the root cause for the bondage. This karma is mine, its results are due to my endeavors. I am the person entitled to its fruits. Such are the thoughts caused by sangha which bind the doer. Lord Krishna advises that one should rise above this sangha buddhi. He declared that cultivating samatvam or unruffled equanimity is yoga. Samatvam yoga muchyate. In the second chapter, Krishna has made clear in a general way 4 principal points. The first is Sharanagati Tattvam, the principle of surrendership. The second is Sankhya Jnanam, analytical knowledge of the essential nature of the immortal self or Atma. The third is Yoga Buddhi, detachment from the fruits of actions through the practice of discrimination with the intellect. And the fourth is the nature and characteristics of the Sthita Prajna, a person of steady wisdom. We have noted the first three already, now about the fourth. Krishna taught Arjuna the nature and characteristics of Sthita Prajna. When Arjuna questioned him, Arjuna prayed, O Keshava, and when that appellation was used, Krishna smiled, for he knew then that Arjuna had understood his splendor to some extent. Do you ask how? Well, what does Keshava mean? It means he who is Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the Trimurti or Trinity. Through Krishna's grace, Arjuna had reached that stage of realization. When Arjuna prayed that Keshava must tell him the true characteristics of a Sthita Prajna, Krishna replied, Paratha, he who has completely freed his mind from all kinds of desires and firmly established in the knowledge and awareness of the Atma alone and immersed in Atmic bliss is referred to as Sthita Prajna. Now, there are two processes in this. The first is Vidvamsaka Padati or the destructive process, and the second is Vidhayaka Padati, constructive process. To give up all the promptings of desire in the mind is Vidvamsaka Padati. To be happy within is Vidhayaka Padati. Vidvamsaka Padati is to remove all the seedlings of wrong and evil from the field of mind and thus cleansing the mind. Vidhayaka Padati is to plant in the field cleansed thus the seedlings of Bhagavad Rati or attachment or fondness towards God. The cultivation of the crop you need is Vidhayaka Padati. Plucking off the unwanted weeds is the Vidhamska Padati. Hence, Vishaya or vasanas, that is sensory attachments, are the unwanted weeds. Bhagavad Rati is the seedling that is needed. The mind is a bundle of desires. So, when there are no desires, the mind vanishes, isn't it? When the yarn that comprises the cloth is taken out one by one, what remains of the cloth? Nothing. Likewise, the mind is made of the warp and woof of desires. When there are no desires, the mind has no further form, and when that happens, one becomes a Sthita Prajna. So, the first thing to be conquered is Kama, or the demon of desire. For this, it is not necessary to wage a huge war. It is not necessary also to use pleasing words to persuade the desire to disappear. Desire will not disappear by such means. Desires are objective, they belong to the category of the Drishya, the object of knowledge that is distinct from the subject or Drishta, with the conviction that I am the witness only, not the object or Drishya, and abstaining from being attached with the objects of the world is the technique to conquer Kama. You must watch the mind from outside it. You must remain only as a witness. You should not get involved in it. Be a witness or observer to the mind, but you should not become the mind. That is the meaning of this discipline. The power of the mind is akin to a very powerful current of electricity. It has to be watched from a distance and not contacted or touched. Touch it, you are reduced to ashes. So too, contact and attachment gives the chance for the mind to ruin you. The farther you are from it, the better. By skillful methods, you have to make the best use of it for your own welfare. The Atmic bliss, which the Sthita Prajna is immersed in does not arise from external objects. He does not need any help from them either. Ananda or bliss is inherent in everyone as part of his very nature. Those with Shuddha Antakarana or purified mind or inner instrument find the highest bliss in the realization of their own reality, the Atma. The joy is Swa Samvedya, self-known, self-experienced. It cannot be evident to others externally. It can only be realized by one's own effort. There is no other means. Since Arjuna had not understood this clearly, Krishna had to clarify it in simple terms in the 56th, 57th and 58th shlokas. Sukham or joy or dukkham, grief, are of three types. Adhyatmikam, caused by oneself like worrying, agitation, illness, etc. Adhibhautikam, caused by other beings or creatures and local circumstances. And Adhidevakam, caused by natural calamities. Sukham and Dukkham are closely related to Punyam, good or meritorious deeds, and Papam, evil or sinful deeds. It is known that sins bring grief as a retribution and meritorious deeds bring joy as reward, and so advice is given to avoid sins and to always perform meritorious deeds. But the Sthita Prajna knows neither the pain of grief nor the thrill of joy. He is not repulsed by one or attracted by the other. He will not retreat before pain or run after it for pleasure. Only those who are ignorant of the Atma will exult or droop when stricken with joy or grief. The Sthita Prajna will be ever engaged in manana or contemplation and rumination. That is why he is called Muni, one who always remains silent, thereby engaging himself in contemplation of the highest principle. His intellect is steady because the senses do not harry it. So Indriya Nigraham, conquest of the senses, is very essential for a sadhaka or spiritual aspirant. But that is not all. So long as the mind is engaged in the objects of perception, one cannot claim complete success in conquering the senses. That is why Krishna says, Arjuna, establish mastery over the senses. Then you need have no fear, for they become snakes with the fangs removed. If one starts engaging his mind in the objective world, he will turn into a beast and must bear the consequences. There is no need to the counting. Likewise, desire has no limit. It can never be satiated. So, along with the mastery of the senses, one must establish mastery of the mind also. That is the sign of Sthita Prajna. If this double mastery is absent, he is a Gata Prajna, a person with deadly wisdom, and not a Sthita Prajna, a person with steady wisdom. Where does the Gata Prajna go? Adhogati, to a regressive path and nowhere else. Urdhva Gati, or the progressive path, the higher stage. That is where the Sthita Prajna goes. Of these two masteries, that is the mastery over the senses and mastery over the mind. If the mind is subdued, that alone is enough. It is not so necessary then to conquer the external senses. If the mind has no Vishya Sakti or engagement of the mind with the objects, raga or affection or attachment, and dvesha, dislike or hatred, have nothing to feed on and they perish by inanition. In the absence of raga and dvesha, even if the senses may have to interact with the objective world, there is no scope for bondage. For in Atma Prasada Labdhaga, one who has earned the gift of self-knowledge. How can anything worldly bring grief? As the stars fade into invisibility when the sun rises, so too the sun of jnana or higher knowledge, wisdom rises. Grief, agitation, and ignorance all vanish into the realms that are unseen. Man has three chief instruments: manas or mind, buddhi, intellect, and indriyas, senses. It is when each of these work in agreement with one another, as per the combination, either samsara prapti, that is immersal in the flux, or Atma Prapti, liberation in the knowledge of the Atma, is realized. Krishna anticipated that Arjuna would be puzzled to know about the results of the association of these three instruments. So, he himself provided the answer. Arjuna, he said, when the mind associates with the senses, it results in samsara prapti. When the mind is subject to the intellect, it results in Atma Prapti. The intellect must resolve, the mind must execute the resolution so made. That is the correct procedure. This was clearly explained by Krishna. Mastering the indriyas or senses in all respects is the hallmark of a sthita prajna. So, during the time when all beings are experiencing night, the sthita prajna would keep himself awake. When all beings are awake, the sthita prajna would be asleep. The literal meaning of this is that what is night for one is day for the other. But that would sound absurd. It would mean the sthita prajna is a person who sleeps during the day when ordinary men are awake and keeps himself awake at night when ordinary men are asleep. The profound meaning of the above statement is very meticulous. Ordinary men are vigilant in the worldly affairs that concern the senses, and that is considered as the state of wakefulness for them. But the sthita prajna is indifferent to these very things. He is, so to say, asleep. Here, what does sleep mean? It means the mastery of the senses. And what does awake means? It means provoking the senses and catering to them. When ordinary men are provoking the senses and their demands, the senses of the sthita prajna are asleep. This can also be put in other words. Forget the Atma Sthiti, that is being aware of the self, and you descend into Deha Sthiti, state of body consciousness. This is what happens to the ordinary man. He sleeps in the Atma Sthiti and wakes up into the Deha Sthiti. Sthita Prajna's case is different. He sleeps in the Deha Sthiti and wakes up in the Atma Sthiti. This is called Sthita Prajna Sthiti. He will not awake in the sensory world, the world where the ordinary man is most vigilant. He is most vigilant in the Atma Sthiti, the state where the ordinary man is not awake. This is the inner meaning. It is far distant from the literal meaning, which is taken as true, would entitle all those who keep awake at nights, like thieves, watchmen, security guards, and others, to the name Sthita Prajna, for all these keep awake at night and sleep during the day. Only those who have given up all traces of kama or desire and become nispraha or free from desires and free from ahamkaram or egoism and mamkaram or attachments can achieve shanti or peace. Krishna ends the description of the Sthita Prajna with an emphasis on kamana tyaga or giving up of desires. The Sankhya Yoga is Advityam or unparalleled, and it contains the entire essence of the Gita. To man, sorrowing on the battlefield of life, bewildered by the attractions and distractions therein, Not knowing where to turn and which road to take, Madhava taught this Sankhya Yoga. The other chapters are like commentaries on the teaching in this chapter. The second chapter is based on the Sankhya Yoga. There is no doubt of that. Arjuna, prepare yourself for withdrawing the mind, for being merged in your own self. Like a tortoise withdraws all the senses from all the objects of Shabda or sound, Sparsha or touch, Rupa or form, Rasa, taste, and Gandha or smell, then you become a Sthita Prajna, said Lord Krishna in the second chapter from the 11th to the 30th shloka on the Atma Tattvam or the reality of the self in a simple manner as easy to understand as eating a peeled plantain fruit. Later, from the 39th to the 55th shloka, he taught the Dharma Karma Bhavam or the attitude of performing the action as an offering to God as prescribed in scriptures, that is so essential for attaining the Godhead, an attitude that is based on the Karma Yoga or the yoga of non-doership of action, which itself is embodied in the Samatva Buddhi or equanimity. In this part of the second chapter, grandeur of Karma Yoga was emphasized. Jai Sai Ram.
साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ